Moshi Moshi.
Hello,
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham,
and I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
and we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
And we're sitting here. It's actually Saturday night, but we're recording a little early because Annie's off on a trip.
Yeah, I get to go be a bike guide again.
Yeah, so she'll be doing that. So we're actually recording a little bit early, and we're also, while recording, eagerly waiting. Our delivery man is supposed to show up.
Yeah.
So
Today, or not today, but in Japan, when you get a package, if they come and then you weren't there to receive it, usually, especially if it's one you have to sign for, which apparently a lot of things you have to sign for, they'll leave a note in your door.
even if you don't have to sign for it, there's sometimes things that they can only give to like a person, and they refuse to leave it. They won't put it in your mailbox.
I guess they would get in trouble if then you were like, who did you give it to? And they were like, oh, we didn't confirm that it was the correct recipient. I don't know. But I have noticed that now Amazon and sometimes another delivery person will leave them at our door, I guess now that they've confirmed that, like, I'm what's written on the package. So that's nice. Anyway.
I guess so. I know Amazon does it, but yeah, we talk about and complain about it a lot because
it makes Zeb upset.
It does, because I'm still, even, year and a half or whatever later, I'm still very used to, in America, they'll just leave it. Like, the delivery people come, they leave it at your door, and then they leave.
It doesn't bother me that much because I appreciate that they actually try to verify the recipient. Anyway, all that to say that when we weren't here and it tried to be delivered, we rescheduled it, and you can pick like a 2-hour block, and so it's 30 minutes left on our 2-hour block, and
So
they still haven't come.
Yeah, he should be here any minute.
So I thought we could start today's episode by telling each other about our bike rides, because today we went on separate bike rides.
Yeah.
Because the sun finally came out.
I know. So we talked about it a little bit last weekend. We got really lucky with like the weather on Saturday. It was like unseasonably warm and it was really nice. And then it kind of quickly went back to winter time.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Last week was nice.
Yeah, but now we're kind of like hunkered back down, just fighting through winter. And I saw there's snow in the forecast actually for Saturday.
There really?
Next Saturday. Yeah.
Well, we won't think about that. But today,
the weather wasn't nice, but the sun was kind of out.
That's true. It was cold and windy.
Blue skies, but
it did mean that I had a tailwind for a huge portion of my ride. The crosswind at the Tedori River was pretty brutal, and actually Zeb and I ran into each other on the Tedori River, which is like 30 miles away from our house, so it was kind of funny to just run into you. But besides that section, it was okay because I think the winds changed. When I went back, I had a tailwind again. It was amazing. That never happens.
Yeah, I had on the Todorigawa, I had really bad crosswind and then tailwind. And then for the second half of my ride, I had mostly crosswind, like head crosswind. So kind of coming back for me was a little brutal. It wasn't the most fun, but it was okay.
So your ride... Tell me the highlights, because I already showed you pictures from my ride, and then I'll tell the listener.
Yeah, I didn't take any pictures on my ride today.
Well, you usually don't, but...
Yeah.
Zeb's like, I'm going to put my head down and go as fast as I can, which is good for being fast.
I don't know. It's just like I'm out there to do a bike ride, and I enjoy the scenery, and I take it in, and I like looking at it, but I often don't really feel the need to stop and take a picture.
I probably stopped too much. But anyway,
yeah.
Tell me your highlights.
So I rode essentially from here down to Kaga, and I actually went into Kaga City. Honestly, the ride was, we talk about this all the time, that the only downside of riding in Ishikawa Prefecture is riding south of Kanazawa. So when you go down towards like Hakusan and Komatsu.
Komatsu's where the airport is.
And then on down into Kaga, it's just kind of like never-ending suburban sprawl. And I guess Kanazawa and south is where most people in the prefecture live. It seems like, there are very few people, not very few, but less people live north of Kanazawa, like going towards Noto. And so we always talk about it's kind of just difficult to ride through there because there's so much traffic and there aren't like a lot of good roads.
Yeah.
So I kind of found like one way that I thought was okay, but there were a lot of traffic lights and then there were a lot of stop signs. And then I got down to like Kaga City
Kaga is like the end of Ishikawa Prefecture. Like you're
Yeah.
almost in Fukui if you're
Yeah.
not familiar with this area, I guess.
Yeah. So that, like, honestly, the first half of my ride was like, it was okay. It wasn't like anything super exciting, nothing like very cool. It was just it was just a bike ride.
But then nothing.
It was also just kind of a bike ride. I did go through, so actually the roads that we took when we went to Fukui to stay in Ono, I took those roads kind of back, and those are actually fun because it rode through a couple of like Kaga's onsen towns
Oh yeah.
that have like the really pretty streets. And so like more traditional buildings and stuff. So that was
It's true.
fun. Like I had little snippets of my ride that were like, oh, that's really pretty.
Yeah.
And then like I rode through that little stretch that was more rural and like remote, and it's got some hills. So that was like pretty nice. But then once I was like back at the Tedori, it was kind of like, like fighting through traffic again to get back like up to Uchinada. So it was just like a good ride. The wind was like kind of getting to me towards the end, but
yeah. I should have put chapstick on before I left. My lips kind of burn. Well,
yeah,
I
yours
know
was a little more scenic.
mine was more scenic, but I also had a goal, like a destination,
Yeah.
kind of. So my ride was 70 miles total.
Mine was 80.
I know. Zeb left
Oh.
after me, rode longer than me, but was back before me.
Yeah, at one point I was like, are you okay?
Yeah,
It's
I was
like-
riding slower, but I also was stopping a bunch. So
I figured you were stopping a lot, but it's funny, every time we use our Japan like debit cards, I get an email.
Oh yeah, you saw my Lawson stop.
Yeah, so at one point I got an email, so I saw you were at a Lawson. So I was like, well, she's still out there because she just went to a Lawson.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we do have the like Find My iPhone thing.
Oh yeah.
And so at one point, after I saw the Lawson thing, I was like, oh, like I wonder
You're
where she
probably
is.
like, dang, she's still in Tsurugi.
No, you were in, by the time I looked on like the Find My Phone thing, you were in Kanazawa. So then at that point, I was like, okay, well, I know she'll get to the like Asanagawa
Yeah.
and then make it back.
Well, I did, but my point of my ride was to go finally see the Watagataki waterfall, which is in the Todorigawa area. And the reason I say finally is because on that same Fukui trip you mentioned, on our way back from like a weekend away, I was like, let's see this waterfall. And you were like, okay, I'm sure we'll see it. And then we blew right by it, and I was like, we need to stop and check the map to see if we're close, and we had passed it already. So this
but
time
there weren't any signs. And
I
you say like we
know.
blew right by it. We weren't really going that like we were kind of like
weren't.
looking around.
Well, that's
but-
what I was surprised about again today. So I went specifically to see the waterfall. That was my like farthest point. And it's on the Tedori River in this really pretty section where it's kind of a canyon, and the water is very turquoise, especially now with some snow melt happening. It's really vibrant blue color. But anyway, it's also on this bike path that runs right next to the river on the Tedori Canyon River Road, something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought we must have, when we were on that before, we were pretty tired. I was pretty tired. And I was like, I probably just didn't notice. Well, there's no signs. Like
Really?
when I rode straight there, I had to get my phone out because I was like, it's around here somewhere. And I was like, okay, I guess it's like 10 more feet away, but there wasn't any signs. And it wasn't until I was on the other side of the river, like I had seen it cross the river and was riding back, that I saw one sign that was like, this way to the waterfall. But you have to like go to the parking lot, and then once you're at the parking lot, they're like, here's the path. But like if you hadn't like parked the car,
I guess it's not like a nationally renowned like
It's
scenic
not,
thing.
it's
So it's like a
not.
local waterfall. So I guess it's kind of like, I mean, if you remember like living in Boone, you would try to go to like Trash Can Falls or something, and it's not
I
like there was a
guess.
sign that was like, here's Trash Can Falls.
I guess except that it's like 30 meters. It's like a very large, it's a very
pretty
large
small
but
in Japan,
narrow, it's
you
like a
know?
narrow waterfall.
It's just another,
Just
maybe it's in the
another
list of like top
waterfall.
500.
I know, Japan likes their top 100 things.
Yeah.
And speaking of top 100 things, the other really cool highlight from my bike trip that you missed out on, you would have liked this because you like trees.
I
One
do
of
like trees.
Japan's 100 best trees, and they even had a plaque that they put next to this tree. And it was a really good tree, actually. It was a really big cedar tree. It's a 680-year-old cedar, which is wild.
It's pretty old, but
And he
it's
has a
not that
name.
old.
What do you mean that's not that old?
Remember the 2 trees that we saw at the shrine that the emperor visited?
Yeah,
those trees were like over 1,000 years old. I
don't
think.
know if they were over 1,000.
Yeah, they're on the list on Wikipedia of like oldest trees in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Those were also some good trees.
But are they in Japan's top 100 trees?
I don't know. They should be. This tree was interesting because it was so wide. It like branched out, and actually the name is oboke sugi. Sugi is how you say cedar.
Like cedar. Yeah.
But oboke, I didn't know this word, but it apparently is a Buddhist altar offering, like a bowl heaped with rice. And it looks like a bowl heaped with rice, I guess.
I bet when it snows.
Actually, the photos of it in the snow are really cool. Because
that's cool.
It's really big. And in the summer, like right now, because they have these supports for the branches, like Japan trees often have.
Yeah.
It looks like a grove of trees because it has so many pillars that are like holding up these huge branches. So it just kind of looks like a cluster. I was actually standing right next to it before I was like, oh, that's the tree. Like I was looking for it and I was like, oh, I thought it was a grove. But then once you go you can duck under the first branch and get like kind of to the base of the tree, and they've built this walking platform around it.
Oh,
and once
cool.
you're in the tree it's really neat because then you can see it's only got the one trunk and you're like
just the one
in the bowl of rice tree.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was I had nice little moments today on my ride.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed the tree. And I mean the waterfall sounds cool too, but yeah.
I was going too slow for your other enjoyment though, but it was a nice pace for me.
You know what I did remember?
What?
It's not on any top 100 lists that I know of, but something I saw that was pretty fascinating.
I don't know.
I saw the Baumkuchen and Castella factory.
Why are you saying it's like the factory?
That's what it was called.
Oh.
It was called the Baumkuchen and Castella factory.
I don't know why, but in Japan they really like Baumkuchen.
Yeah, so I was trying to think about this.
It's a German cake. I don't even know if it's a German cake because the only context I have is learning about it while I'm in Japan.
It is German. I did take German in high school.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember people being into Baumkuchen.
They probably weren't as much into it as Japan is.
No, but it is pretty fascinating because I was trying to think about this in the context of, like, as Americans, do we have... So for an example, like, the croissant is pretty like globally loved. Like in Japan they like croissants too.
Yeah, but
in America like
French.
I know. So then I was trying to think maybe like there was a bakery near the house like where I grew up and it was famous for an eclair.
That's also French.
Yeah, so I was trying to think of like
an American pastry?
No, foreign pastries that America really loves. Because Japan is like really about the Baumkuchen.
Yeah.
Like it's something at the cultural festival at my high school both years. Like there were like 4 classes that were selling Baumkuchen.
That's true.
It's in every single convenience store. And then specifically in Ishikawa, they really like, and I think I'm saying it right, the Castella. How do you actually say
Spanish,
it? Castella?
Actually. I guess if you're saying it Spanish, it's Castella, but you have to roll the R's, which I can't do.
Because I think it's also French.
You have to roll the L's. No, that's Spanish, isn't it?
No, the Castella? I thought it was French.
Oh.
But...
The listeners screaming at us right now.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just interesting that Japan, those two, like pastries, I don't know if you...
Actually, the name is Portuguese.
Oh.
Cake from Castile.
We've really messed up.
Yeah.
So, but where's the pastry from?
I don't know. But anyway, so you saw the factory?
I saw the factory. It was closed. I thought about stopping.
Oh.
But yeah, it just made me think about like, I wonder why Japan really loves those two, like dessert items.
Besides that they taste good.
Yeah, but then it made me think about like, well, back in America, like we loved foreign pastries too. But then I was like trying to think, was there a pastry that was nationally loved that, I don't know, like tiramisu is usually on dessert menus, like in American restaurants.
There's tiramisu here too, and it makes me laugh now because my friend can't order it because she said that she was like, I'm traumatized from it, and she was like, am I using that word right? And I was like, I mean, I think so, but like, what happened? And I guess she like breathed in when she like was eating it, and you know, if you inhale cinnamon, it like really messes you up.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's like, no, I can't enjoy it anymore.
Ooh, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just still makes me laugh seeing it's just Baumkuchen is everywhere.
Yeah.
So
we should eat one.
I know I have gotten it before. I think at the school festival last year, I went into one of the classrooms and bought some Baumkuchen from some of the students. But it was funny because it's like, it's the school cultural festival.
Yeah. And they're selling German cake.
Yeah. I was like, shouldn't you guys be selling like taiyaki or something? Or like.
Maybe that's, yeah, what is even American? Actually, maybe chocolate chip cookies.
I was thinking pound cake.
Oh, yeah.
Is pound cake, it's probably not an American cake. But I feel like it's quintessentially American now.
Or apple pie. That's pretty American.
American's apple pie.
Yeah.
We just took everything from everywhere else. But it's, yeah.
Well, do you want to tell me about this other concept that is unrelated to cake, but
yeah, so these are
Japanese
concepts that we can talk about. There are two specifically that we're going to talk about, and they're kind of like cultural phenomenons that are interesting within the realm of kind of like Japanese culture and interacting with Japanese people. The first one, and I didn't know there's a word for this, is called aizuchi. And aizuchi is when you're talking to someone and they're like, like, you know, they're like making noises that are showing kind of like engagement or interest, like that.
I guess I just did one.
So Annie just did one.
I'm engaged and interested.
Yeah. So now I'm going to be self-conscious about, do I sound engaged and interested?
I do think that happens like more often in Japanese conversation.
It does, and
it's almost distracting in TV shows where there's Japanese people, like, you know, when they have a panel of people and they'll talk to each other, sometimes they'll be like, and I'm like, whoa.
And sometimes people I've talked to in real life do that, and it is...
Just did it again.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I don't want to say annoying because that's a little harsh, but it is when you're talking to someone and you can almost, it's like I'm talking to them and I feel like they can't even hear me because as I'm speaking, they're like, and it's like,
I don't take it that harshly,
might not even have heard what I just said because you were trying to show that you were so engaged. You were making so much noise that I felt interrupted.
Sometimes I think people, the louder they get, the more agreement they show. But then apparently, based on this article, that's a frequent misinterpretation by non-native speakers such as myself.
Yeah. It says, aizuchi are frequently misinterpreted by non-native speakers as listeners showing agreement and approval. And they said this is particularly challenging in business relations because the non-native speaker usually assumes that the Japanese counterpart is agreeing with their suggestions or agreeing with what they're saying, when the Japanese speaker is really only just trying to say, like,
I'm listening.
Yeah, okay. Like, oh, yeah. Like,
right.
But they may...
It's just engagement, not approval.
It's just engagement. And I think the big trick comes from, sometimes Japanese people will be like, hi, hi. Like, they'll be saying yes, but they're really just being like,
Like, understood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're saying hi, like, as, like, and you, like, when you literally translate it, you're thinking they're saying, like, yes, like, but that's not. And so it's just, like, an interesting dynamic. And I've thought about this before because there was actually a podcast I was a guest on, and we talked about it before. It was the Japan Kyo, like, station podcast. And in particular, he lived in Japan for a while, and he studied Japanese, and he speaks Japanese at, like, pretty high level. He will actually do this. He's an American and he lives in Hawaii, but he uses aizuchi. And I'm guessing it's because he was used to, like, speaking with Japanese people, like, fairly regularly.
And on an auditory medium, you probably do feel more need to show that you're
but he
listening.
uses, like, the Japanese aizuchi.
Oh.
So, and it's funny because there was actually, I was, reading about the podcast and I went and checked the reviews. And there was a funny review from someone that was like, I wish that the host would stop being so annoying because he's always
so harsh.
I think, but it's the listener didn't understand. Like, I guess they hadn't really listened to much Japanese in context, and so
they didn't understand that the host is just, politely agreeing or not politely listening, not agreeing.
Yeah, and so it was like a funny, almost like cultural, like, lost in context.
Yeah.
When the host, he was speaking English, but he was using Japanese aizuchi. And so it was like an interesting mismatch of cultural language.
Yeah. It's funny because the opposite probably happens when Japanese people listen to English things. Not always, but maybe they think it's rude when people who are speaking English don't act interested. You know, if I just like sat here and didn't
Because
act like I cared, in their mind, maybe it seems really rude that I'm not engaged.
Because in conversational English, we use these to a certain extent, but like a pretty low degree.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we show engagement and interest by like sincerely listening. Like we'll remain like kind of quiet, but we're like, you know, zoned in. Or we make a lot of eye contact. So we're like really like looking at each other.
That's true. Sometimes eye contact makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I have like
here.
Yeah, I've like talked to people that they'll do the thing where they'll stand next to me and talk. And I'm always like I want to like turn and look at them.
Right, because it feels rude as Americans. At least I grew up, my parents were like, you have to look people in the eye when you talk to them. And yeah, but sometimes that's seen as like too intense or like aggressive.
Yeah, maybe like a little aggressive. But yeah, it's just like an interesting like cultural thing. So if you're ever in Japan and you're speaking with someone and they're making all these noises, they're trying to show that they're sincerely like listening to your problem, or they're listening to whatever you're saying. They're trying to show that they're engaged, but sometimes it can be a little kind of like calm down.
Yeah, but it's not meant to be like that.
Yeah. And this next one is an aside that is I've mostly noticed in my like workplace.
Oh, our package is here.
Package.
Hi. Oh, it is. You want to describe what it is since I'm away from the mic?
So what you're hearing in the background, all this rustling.
Like a little rat.
Yeah, it's this Annie just got her package from the mailman, and we had some embroidered hoodies made.
Yeah.
So that's what Annie's looking at right now. I'm a fan. I like it. And I think it has something on the wrist. Yeah.
Logo.
That's nice. It's fun.
And 2 shirts. Oh, sorry. 1 shirt and another sweatshirt.
Yeah. It's fun.
It is fun. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we got our mail.
Yeah, the delivery guy had to confirm who I was because I forgot that since we used a foreign, like third-party shipment thing, I had written my name in Romaji, so it just said Annie, and he was like confused although when a like white lady opened the door, he's probably like, oh yeah, this is probably you, but he was confirming that it was me.
Yeah, he really cut it close here.
5 minutes from the deadline.
I know. I feel like they really do. They either come like right at the very opening of the window or like right at the end. It's very rarely like in the middle.
I know. One time we were like a little late on the train, and
I think the delivery window was set like similarly tonight, like 6 to 8 p.m. And
we got home at like 6:08, and we missed them already.
Yeah, they had come at like 6:04.
Which, I mean, there was nothing wrong with that. We were late, but so what a bummer.
Yeah, because then it's just kind of frustrating because they'll only try once during that, and I get it. They only try once during that window. It's like you came right at 6:04, man. You couldn't maybe drop by again at like 7:54?
Well, no, they can't. They have a schedule.
I know. But yeah, we got it, so that's good.
Yeah. Whew.
Anyway, we're going to move on from aizuchi, or things like that, to this is like a little tricky because it's something I notice in like my workplace and with some of my coworkers, and it's called hitori goto, which is basically like monologue, like speaking to yourself. And
when Zeb told me about this, I was like, I don't think that's a Japanese thing. Like, I talk to myself all the time, but
yeah, it's a sign of dementia, early onset.
I'm
speaking
losing
to
it.
oneself.
But I guess what you were saying is that people will talk to themselves at work, in your workplace, the same volume as they would talk to somebody next to them.
Super similar volume, yeah. Like I've been sitting at my desk before, and my desk is right next to the copier, and a teacher will come in to use the copier, and they'll start to use it, and they'll start talking, and it's like volume enough that like me? Like I don't know how to use the copier. But no, they're just like kind of like talking to themselves. And
like a lot of people at work do this?
I can think of like 3 or 4 teachers that do it. Yeah.
It's interesting.
And sometimes it's like I've almost thought of it as like an expression of like showing that you're busy. Like you can do it, or it's like if you're worried that someone might not see that you're there, they do it almost as like an awareness.
Didn't want to spook
thing.
you.
Yeah, because sometimes they'll just be talking to themselves, and it's just really interesting. So I Googled it because I mean I don't know what else to do. So I just Googled it. I was like, does anyone
You don't
have
want to ask
like
them like, hey man, why are you talking to yourself?
I was like, does anyone have Japanese coworkers that talk to themselves? And there was a thread that I found where someone brought
On
up this
Reddit?
term, Hitori Goto. No, it was on one of those other stupid websites like Quora or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's not very scientific anyway.
No, it's not very scientific. That's why this is kind of like an aside, and it's just something I've personally noticed. But it's funny enough to me because I have a few coworkers who do it. And it is like talking to themselves loud enough where I do feel like they're sometimes I'll like turn around like behind, like there's no one else is here.
I mean, I never really had that instance when I worked in an office where people would talk to themselves at that volume, but I still don't know that that's a Japanese thing.
Well, that's why I'm a little confused because I'm not necessarily prepared to say it's like a Japanese cultural thing. And so I was trying to like research it more. So unfortunately, this is the tricky part. Hitori Goto is also like the theme song of some anime, and it was like super popular. So if you Google Hitori Goto, you'll only get results that have like to do with this anime theme song. So then I was trying to like Google it in Japanese and find it, and I did find some like articles that talk about how, like particularly in the workplace, people use it as a way to like organize their thoughts or reduce stress. Like if they're like rushed or they're like almost like like the train conductor when they do like the point thing. It sounded like it was almost a like verbal form of that. Like if you're using the copier, you say outside, like I need to make 5 copies, and then you're like beep beep beep. Like, it's just like a funny like another cultural thing because I have worked in other offices in America, and I definitely don't remember people.
Not at the same volume. People would talk to themselves under
like
their breath, and like
yeah.
I'll talk to myself all the time. I give myself lots of positive affirmation on on bike rides a lot if I get worried about something.
One of the articles did talk about the prevalence, and this article is in Japanese, and I was translating it like with Google Translate. It talked about the prevalence of self-talk and how it's become very popular in America, particularly with athletes, and how they're taught to use self-talk but then it did have like a warning. It was like, just so you know though, if you use too much self-talk or if you use it in the wrong setting, it might be a sign that you're a crazy person. And it had this like whole thing.
Line,
Yeah, it had this whole thing about how like just make sure you use it in the right place so you don't scare anyone. I was kind of like, I'm sure it was like a funny Google Translate, but I was like
I use it sometimes when we're on our like adventure trips if we've been out for like all day and something's gone wrong. I'll be like, everything's fine, I'm strong, I have plenty of calories and water left, like we'll make it to the hotel, no, nothing will go wrong.
Yeah, a little bit of Hitori Goto.
Yeah, just losing it back there.
Yeah.
Anyway, unrelated again, but my random topic that I've been thinking about this week is kids' food menus. I forget how I got onto this topic. I think it was because, when you see like a cut up hot dog that's supposed to look like a octopus, I think
I had a lot of those as a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't really think I had that. So I thought when I came here to Japan and saw them, I thought that it was like a Japanese thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, my mom made them all the time for me when I was a kid.
They're in all kinds of kids' food, like meals here, but they'll just cut part of the hot dog, so that the like quote legs kind of like splay out. Anyway, so then it just made me think, like, what does kids' food, like the kids' food menu look like around the world, and is it similar in Japan and America? Because there do seem to be a lot of similarities. A lot of times the kids menu, either they won't have a kids menu or they'll have a kids menu that's very westernized, and I just haven't really seen a, like, maybe it would be ochazuke, like rice and soup or something.
Maybe, or I think what might be more common, and we see this a lot, which is really funny, that they also don't have a petite women's menu, but there will be some items on the menu that will have like a literal like translation that'll say, this portion size is good for the woman. And it'll say something like to that effect.
That makes me laugh too. I see that a lot.
And so it makes me think that maybe it's not so much like a true like menu like we have in America, like a kids menu, but usually you can order the same thing, but just in a smaller portion size. Like when you go to order, you can select, how much rice you want. You can do like small, medium, large.
That's true. A lot of times the meal will be the same price, but you can decide how much rice you want. Like you could ask for extra rice and it's free, or you can ask for less rice if you're not going to, so you don't waste anything.
Yeah, because so maybe kids do like a small.
Yeah, you don't take food home really in Japan.
Yeah.
Like you don't really ask for it to go, unless it's, you take the whole thing, like you're ordering to go. You don't really take part of meals home.
And some people have said that that's like a rude thing, but I've heard it more as like a health safety thing. Like that the
restaurant's afraid.
Yeah, they're afraid that you're going to take it home and then you're going to improperly handle it and then eat it and get sick and then try and blame the restaurant.
Interesting.
I've heard people say that more often.
Well,
but anyway.
Back to the kids menu. So then I was looking up, like, where did kids menus come from? Like, maybe that's an American thing. But in Japan, the first appearance of okosama lunch, which is like kids' meal lunch, this is from a Kikkoman, like, Kikkoman soy sauce?
Yeah.
This is from their website. But they had a little article about kids' meals. And they said that it was likely in 1930 when this restaurant in Tokyo, the Nihonbashi Mitsukoshi main store, they added a yoshoku, like, which is Western-style meal for kids, on their menu. And they say that it's because worldwide in 1930, economic depression was taking a toll on Japan, and the restaurant manager thought, oh, maybe I'll have like a fun one-plate meal to bring, like, to make kids happy at the restaurant, because I guess this was a new concept. And so he had all these assorted tidbits on the meal, kind of like what they do with regular adult meals in Japan, like where you have a lot of little plates in one.
That's funny.
But they were like a lot of miniature Western style things, like ketchup fried rice, like omurice kind of, spaghetti, which you might see called Napolitan in katakana, croquettes, Hamburg steak, which is kind of like a hamburger, but you take the bun away and it's just like the steak with gravy.
It's almost more like a what do you call the Salisbury steak?
Yeah.
It's more like a Salisbury steak.
Jam and egg sandwiches, and sugar bonbons. And the article says that at the time, all these Western-inspired foods weren't commonly made at home, and so they were considered a special treat, and so kids were, like, excited about this kids' food menu, and that's why they ordered it, which is interesting, and I guess that kind of explains why most kids' menu, either they won't have it or they'll have this kind of Western assortment menu. I don't know. Sometimes they'll present it just in different shapes, which we do that in America. But like they'll mold the rice into like a little Mount Fuji with a flag in it or something.
Yeah, we have like little dinosaur nuggets.
Yeah. So I don't know. And then I was like, well, where did it come from in the USA? And this is, I didn't do like a huge scientific article deep dive into this, but from some articles that I could read, it was kind of around the same time. This one says 1918, so that's like 12 years or earlier than Japan. There was a department store. This one specifically says this Rike Kumler department store in Dayton, Ohio. They were one of the first ones to advertise a special lunch for children. It was 20 cents. I don't know what that's equivalent to, but it seems cheap. And they thought that children should be fed a bland diet. So their kids' menu was rice baked in cream, peanut butter sandwich, milk and ice cream. Which the milk and ice cream, that sounds like overkill, but...
I mean, honestly, peanut butter sandwich, a little bit of milk, and then some ice cream dessert.
Yeah,
sounds
also...
pretty good. It sounds like my lunch. I would be excited.
Rice baked in cream? I don't know.
That sounds weird. The peanut butter sandwich, milk, and ice cream, I'm okay with that.
Another article that I read said that lamb chop, like plain boiled lamb chop was in everything. And they said it was, quote, the chicken nugget of the jazz age, which is a fun description. But I think I've had lamb like...
This is plain broiled.
What did I say?
Boiled.
Oh, broiled is
broiled
different,
sounds
isn't it?
way better.
Broiled is like
boiled.
in an oven, yeah.
Like, here, have this boiled lamb chop.
It does sound way better.
Like the sad depression kids, like, oh.
But it's funny that meat can change so different. Like, maybe it doesn't change, but I don't really see lamb on the menu very much when we're back in America. I think I've had it like a handful of times. So for it to have been like the staple kids food thing, I
Yeah.
never ate it as a child. And then it was
Well,
kind
now
of,
it's kind of like a posh, like rich, like, oh, you're
Yeah.
having the lamb tonight?
yeah.
Kind of like, I guess, like lobster. They say that, like, it used to be prisoner food, but now, like, oh,
Well-
like, would you like to have the lobster?
Before kids food menus in like department stores and stuff, just generally feeding kids in America, the book The Care and Feeding of Children by the pediatrician Emmett Holt in 1894, they had some like pretty interesting things about how children should never, before they're 10 years old, they should never eat things like ham, bacon, corn, cod, tomato soup, or lemonade, which I don't know, like those seem kind of arbitrary, but
Yeah, they seem, yeah, just kind of. Why tomato soup?
I don't know, but
And corn.
somehow from we transformed from this bland rice baked in cream in America to at some point it became pretty like fried, pretty still beige but not bland, like a lot of French fries,
I guess
nuggets.
define bland, though, because if you think about, like, a chicken nugget, it's kind of bland,
Yeah, it's not
unless
that
you put, like,
flavorful.
some seasoning or something on it.
Like ketchup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of when you think of kids menus?
Honestly, I don't, like, I think, how old are you when you can order off the kids menu?
Like
Do
definitely
you
under
remember
12.
going to a restaurant and ordering from the kids menu? I don't know if I have any memories of.
I don't really remember.
Ordering-
I feel like I had a big appetite as a child because I would be like, well,
I do have
just
memories
want
of
the pasta.
Happy Meals.
Yeah, I have.
I used to
yeah.
get Happy Meals, but I don't remember going to a restaurant and, like, well, can we have the kids menu, please?
I
Like,
know. Well, because usually the kids menu was like you get a cup of mac and cheese, and I was like, I'll just eat the whole like entree,
Dang.
you know?
Grown girl.
I'm a growing girl. Anyway, so yeah, I'm curious if you live in a country where maybe you have something else on your kids menus, or maybe kids menus just aren't a thing.
Or if you're one of the people that has a child, let us know. I really,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I know exists, but I also feel like I can remember, like, more that a kids menu is like a thing.
The
Can
thing
you
that I
still go to
remember-
a restaurant and ask? Like, can you say, like, oh, can we have a kids menu?
Oh, I remember it being a section on the regular menu.
Yeah.
But it would say kids menu. So I honestly have more memories of ordering kids menu foods for my youngest sisters because they were.
Oh, so you've used a kids menu.
I've used a kids menu.
Oh, okay.
Well, my two youngest sisters are I think like 13 and 11 years younger than me maybe.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they were like old enough where they, you know, sometimes we would go out to eat and they were like, I don't really want a big dinner, so we would just get something from the kids menu for them. But it was always like chicken nuggets or like a side of mac and cheese.
That's why I think that it is usually, yeah, maybe it's not like broiled lamb, but it is something that is fairly bland. Like a chicken nugget, there are a lot of kids that will, you know, like just
Yeah.
eat a chicken nugget, but they don't want like too much seasoning. Like,
Yeah.
upset their little systems.
Yeah, I don't know, but why not small versions of the main menu, you know? Like why can't you just have like,
Too much adult seasoning.
yeah, maybe.
Like when you get the adult hot chocolate here in Japan.
Yeah.
It's got the adult flavor. It's
Well, no, that's actually the opposite. If you get, they
Oh, yeah,
do
it's
serve
bitter.
adult sweetness hot chocolate in Japan, but it's less sweet.
yeah, it's like a more like dark, like a
It's-
bittery.
it's pretty
kind
good.
of- yeah.
So
Yeah, I
that's
don't
my
know.
aside on kids menus. I don't really have much information for the listener, like much fact, but yeah, if you have something to add to that or something to educate me on, I'm curious.
Yeah. Or we'll start keeping an eye out.
You'll start keeping an eye out for, well, maybe we'll go to a restaurant
I'll
and be
just
like,
start asking.
excuse
"Can I
me, do you have a kids menu?
They'll look at us like
For who? We'll be like,
it's,
me.
yeah, it's
I'm
for,
the baby.
She's a woman, you know. Women
Tiny
shouldn't
meals.
eat that much. Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, of course.
Yeah. Huh.
Why didn't you say so?
They'll probably just flip it over and be like, well, this is the women's menu. This is for the dainty woman.
A half piece of toast.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, there's not really a good way to transition into your next topic.
Yeah, it's definitely not on the kids menu.
It's You want to tell me about some nearly naked men?
Yeah, so last time we were talking about a pass that was created specifically to help out tourism in the Hokuriku region due to the earthquake. And then I happened to see this article about it's the last time that they're doing the Nearly Naked Men Festival. And that was like in the title of the news article. And it's a festival and they kept using the term near naked men. And
I wonder because I guess you're reading the Asahi in English, but I wonder what the word that they were translating from is.
I don't know.
Like if there's a word for like nearly naked in Japanese.
I should look it up.
But they are men just like in loincloths.
Yeah, they're men in loincloths. And they fight over a bag full of charms. And it's like a hemp bag, and it's full of charms, and it's in a temple, maybe a shrine. And I guess it's like 1,000 near naked men, and they go in there.
That's a lot of men, naked or not.
And they fight it out. And apparently if you can get the bag is full of charms, and if you can get one out, it means that you'll avoid disaster that year. And this is the last year that they're doing it, because I guess they've decided that, well, it doesn't really fit the times anymore. And it's slightly related to the train pass we were talking about, because the article had this funny like little blurb at the bottom that in 2019 they asked the JR East Company to help promote the festival, and they apparently gave the JR East Company this poster, and they were like, would you hang this poster up to help promote our festival and travel to this region? And the JR Company said no, because they think that it would cause people too much discomfort from seeing the poster of near naked men.
Yeah. They are like packed in this. So I've got the article open, and it is a temple. It's the Kokuseji temple, and they're like packed in this thing. It looks like these men are like cattle. Like you can't even move. There's so many nearly naked men like pressed up against each other. And when you just see it without context, you're like, are they okay? Are they trapped in here? Like, are they prisoners? Like,
I want to know some context. Is it like the running of the bulls? Like, do they put them in like a corral and then they lock them in?
No, it's nothing like that dramatic. So from the art, I don't know anything besides what this article says, but they go on their own accord, and they carry square lanterns, and they purify themselves in the Yamaguchikawa.
That's the part I couldn't get down with. They have to get in a river, and this is in February.
Well, that's all part of it. It's like the purification thing. It's the same thing when we went to one of the temples in Wakayama. They purify themselves.
No, I get
in the ocean.
It's too cold for me.
Well, then you would not be...
Could you imagine me nearly naked?
No.
Getting in a river in the winter?
No, but that's why I know you would never get the bag of charms.
I would die.
You would never be safe for that year. You would just have to...
But the thing is...
leave it up to chance.
You could just not... Yeah, you can just not participate.
I guess there's, like, some fun in participating, and, like, you can just let loose and just, like, fight over this bag of charms.
I guess so. But then the sad part is it's the last year because everyone's getting too old. So there aren't enough young, like nearly naked guys. Men. Yeah.
It's in Iwate Prefecture.
Yeah.
In Oshu. And I don't know if there's 1,000 men. It's 1,000-year-old history. It looks like from the photo, it looks like there could be 1,000 men in there.
That's a lot.
It's at least a 1,000, which maybe they just want to be part of history.
You think that they make them get in the river because before maybe they didn't get in the river, and then people were like, dang, it smells.
I think it would be stinky anyway.
Like maybe we should all take a bath before we wrestle.
No, I think it's part of the purification process. I think it's a...
No, I think about 700 years ago, someone was like, hey guys.
How about we purify ourselves?
Yeah, let's take a dip in the river.
No, I think it's part of... I think there is like a spiritual aspect to it, but it maybe looks a little too dramatic on the posters.
Yeah, so you won't see these nearly naked men hanging in your local train station.
This is the last year.
We missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well...
Yeah, real quickly, do you want to tell me about the first Japanese person in space?
Real quickly. Yeah, I'll try to...
It's a lot going on here, but...
I have a lot of bullet points because I get sidetracked, so I'm trying to keep it on track.
My favorite bullet point is untrained chain smoker. What was he doing in space?
Yeah, thanks for, opening up the discussion here because those are my questions too. So I learned this week that Toyohiro Akiyama in 1989 was the first person from Japan to be in space. He was also the first journalist, like, period, to go to space. And he was completely untrained. Like you said, he was a chain smoker. He spent most of his time in space throwing up so much that the people that were on his plane were like, or on his spacecraft were like, I've never seen someone throw up this much. And just wishing that he had cigarettes. But the reason he was up there is during, I guess, the bubble economy that Japan had. This was 1989. The Tokyo Broadcasting Systems, TBS, they had so much money that for their 40th anniversary, they paid 1.5 billion yen, $10 million, to the USSR space program to send a journalist to the Mir space station for a TV show. And they had so much money that this was like a feasible, profitable thing that they could be like, this sounds like a good 40th anniversary, episode idea.
Yeah. And
they did it.
I think that one time you were reading too, this was like the first commercial flight to space.
Yeah, he's the first commercial passenger. So first Japanese person, first journalist, I guess also commercial passenger because they paid to send him.
Well, he definitely wasn't an astronaut.
No,
we know that much.
I don't know if I made that clear enough, but so the TV show is called Nihonjin Hatsu Uchu E, which is the first Japanese in space. It's the same network that did Takeshi's Castle, if that tells you anything.
And if you don't know what Takeshi's Castle is, you might recognize Most Extreme Elimination Challenge with Kenny Blankenship and his co-host. And then there was also Guy Ledouche and the captain.
Yeah.
If you watch Spike TV in the early 2000s, you'll definitely remember Most Extreme Elimination Challenge.
Zeb had to tell me about this, and then we got into a rabbit hole watching some like old YouTube videos.
Oh,
but
it's so good.
That's the English title for the Takeshi's Castle Japanese show. It's very traumatic, but so I'm sure it was the same kind of vibes that were on this first Japanese in space show. But he was described as a hapless space tourist and an anti-hero, because people were like, wow, look at this middle-aged man just up there doing it. And he was up there for almost 8 days. And then afterwards he retired. That was like it. He was like, I'm done with being a journalist. That was too much.
I probably would retire too.
Yeah. I hope they paid him a lot.
I spent 8 days just puking in outer space.
I know. So he then became an organic shiitake mushroom farmer in Fukushima. Which, if you're like, oh, Fukushima, wasn't that the place that had the earthquake and nuclear fallout disaster? Yes. He has really bad luck. So...
One of his bad luck, he got to go to outer space. That's not bad luck.
I guess it's not bad luck.
It's just unfortunate that he was so addicted to cigarettes that he spent all of his time in outer space throwing up.
I think it was like, not from cigarettes only. Don't you think it was the G-forces and things that made him motion sick? Anyway, it sounds miserable to me. Maybe that's worth it to get to see space. But, yeah, so he was forced to evacuate his Fukushima farm. But, yeah, I think he's still a farmer, but just not in Fukushima.
You think he still smokes
fascinating
cigarettes?
Person. Probably.
I wonder what he's up to.
He's still alive. I mean, it hasn't killed him. He's had a great life, and he just smokes like 4 packs a day. It was one article. I don't know if it's quite that much anymore, but yeah.
It does make me think about how we had like a friend tell us, it was actually the bar master one night mentioned that just, in that period that Japanese people just had too much money. And he said it was like almost like a sickness for a while that he was like, it was just too much money and that people were just buying like the most ridiculous stuff. He was also mentioning that that's why apparently there's also a TV show, and I mean, I wonder what will happen with it, where divers would go off the coast at Noto, and it's because fishermen just had these houses full of like old antiques and stuff, and it
Oh,
was too
you told me
much.
about this. They would
Yeah.
just take their boats out and just like throw antiques out
Yeah,
into
because
the
they didn't
ocean.
want to pay to like dispose of it, and they just had like so much money and so much stuff that on their fishing trips they would just go out into the ocean and just throw stuff overboard.
Wow.
And apparently there was a show.
We don't need this national treasure.
Yeah, well, they would go like dive out there and like find all these like lost treasures.
Wow.
Because it was just like fisherman's garbage.
That's so
And so
interesting.
the bar master told me one night, he was like, yeah, like during that time period, like Japanese people had too much money. He said it was, yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, the first Japanese astronaut is a pretty interesting story. Also, as a final thing I'll say about this, so that guy, Toyohiro Akiyama, was one of 2 people that they were considering to send up there. He's like a chain-smoking, middle-aged man. The other person was a 26-year-old lady who was like pretty active, pretty into like mountain climbing and some other like very athletic sport. Of course, they picked the guy.
Yeah, you can't send a woman in outer space.
I know, it's just so crazy that they were like, they looked at these 2 candidates and they were like, we'll definitely send the guy.
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
Do you have a word of the week?
Yes, you go first.
Okay, so mine is shumatsu, which I'm surprised we haven't used this before. I looked on the website and we hadn't. We've probably mentioned it before in the podcast, but shumatsu is weekend, and it's literally shu is week and matsu is end, so shumatsu. So right now it's the weekend, and I'm using that because I'm really excited because this is the opening weekend for the spring classic season. So the first World Tour racing is happening in Europe this weekend, and I can't wait. So I'm super excited to finally get to watch some really good bike racing. Yeah.
Wow.
What's yours?
Mine is ijo, which is, that's all. It can mean other things, like it could mean like beyond or not less than, but if you're at a restaurant and you give the order, maybe you're like, I'd like one of these, he'll take this, they'll take this, and then the waiter's kind of standing there, and then you can say, ijo desu, like, that's all for now, thanks, and they'll be like, okay. But I'm using that because I'm very proud of myself for having known this word and continuing to continually forgetting to use it in an actual context. We went to McDonald's for the first time in a while. Yeah. And I was like, we'd like this and this and this. It was after a bike ride, so we were pretty hungry.
Yeah.
And then I said, ijo desu. And they were like, hi. Anyway.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of our podcast. And
we have a newsletter.
Oh, yeah, we do have a newsletter.
We should have said this at the top of the episode, but...
Yeah, but if you're still listening, then clearly...
Thank you.
Something is attracting you to this
Or they
platform.
Started playing it on their phone and walked away from their phone, and we're still talking.
And now they're hearing it, and they're like, what's going on over there?
Anyway,
but we're telling you about the Rambling Rams Dispatch.
Oh, okay. I thought we were saying the same thing.
Or our newsletter.
It's at ramblingramsbothams.com/newsletter. Yeah. And you can sign up, and Zeb will send you something in your inbox once a month.
Once a month. And that'll happen next week.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead and sign up soon because we have a big secret.
That's right, we do. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.